Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I'm Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Dark, Season 3, Episode 8. It is called The Paradise. It is, of course, the series and season finale, so full spoilers, as always. Full spoilers for the whole show at this point, so here we are. Going all the way back to Season 1, the idea of there being three sides to everything was kind of a thing, and back in Season 1 it made sense. There was no confusion to it. It was three time periods. It was present day, the 80s and the 50s. It was very simple. It all made sense. So despite the fact that talking about a third world, although it's not actually a million miles away from something,
kind of what we were saying in the first episode of this season.
Yeah, like that. I don't know if we ever quite phrased it as a separate world, but I think we've often during the show talked about what was the world like before the loop started. We've often talked about there had to be something before the loop existed. And
we have, and in the first episode of this season, we specifically talked about, with all the mirror imagery, how these two worlds felt like two halves of a whole.
Yeah.
I remember talking about that distinctly.
So we never hit the terminology by any means, but we never referred to it as an original world, and we never, to hit the way it phrased it in the show. So I don't want to take that much credit. I'm not even trying to take any credit. Just so much that what I'm saying is that the core ideas that it's playing with in this final episode are not out of nowhere. They're not so alien that they feel like they're just like, oh well, they're interested in this whole new thing at the end. No, actually,
it doesn't feel like a cheap pulling the rug out from under you. It's a twist technically because it's a last minute reveal.
But we've been thinking
all
of
it makes perfect sense.
But we've been thinking about kind of along these lines for a long time, even if we've never quite put it in this context. So, so old Claudia comes to Adam. He's wondering why he's not in paradise. Why is he still here? What's going on? And, as she's like monologuing a little bit, although this is not a monologue I'm complaining about because this monologue had a lot of very useful things happening during it.
This was a fascinating monologue.
I love the idea of, like, just... Because one of the things we've been saying all season, actually, is the idea that everything more or less still happens on the second world, on Earth 2. And it's a bit more accelerated. And I love that they show Ulrich and how he encountered things and how it's different, but it's essentially still the same kind of thing. Like, he goes back, but it's not to the 50s, it's to the 80s. He still attacks Helga, but old Helga in this world actually kills him. So instead of going to the hospital and spending the rest of his life there, he just dies.
But the point is, he still damages Helga's face and then doesn't come back. So the end result is the same. Also on this, I've been thinking it all season, but the Ulrich actor is probably the only adult actor that has noticeably aged over the seasons. Yeah, he's got a bit of a chubbier face.
Yeah, but you've noticed that because they showed you him exiting the cave side by side.
No, because I was gonna mention it last episode and didn't, and I'm really annoyed at myself for not mentioning it last episode because I was really thinking it when I was watching it before, and then they showed me this side by side. I was like, oh, I'm not just imagining it. He really has, because in my memory he's really he had a much gaunter face, whereas here he's put on a bit.
He's just happier on Earth too. He's ate some more Christmas food and he's not lost the weight.
Yeah, why not?
It's fine. We can go with it.
Yeah.
I don't believe you were thinking about this last episode. My headcanon is that
you don't need to believe it. I know in my heart that is the truth, and that is all that really matters at the end of the day.
What heart? So
touche.
So I think what this episode has for me that I really like, because you said that you'd heard something earlier in the season, which was that you could watch the last episode without watching the rest of the season. It all makes sense. I don't completely agree with that. I see what they're saying, and the broad strokes you would get it. There's a lot of little things though that would make more sense because if you've watched the season, but.
Yeah, but I think you could understand most of this because of it does a really good job of explaining all the details.
Yeah, what I like about this last episode, and it's something that I feel has almost been missing from the show for a while, is that once the show's wheels got moving, right, once all the cogs were turning and everything was going somewhere, not even in season 1, I'm thinking more, it was probably a point in season 2 where it hit, where we're so ingrained in everything that's going on in the world of Dark, and we're so ingrained in all these characters' lives and all different time periods, the episode started to sort of form this kind of almost shapeless kind of idea. And it's not really a complaint so much, but just that once we knew everyone, it started to be less about having one character with a goal and trying to achieve that goal and trying to get to it. And I feel like this last episode kind of returned us back round to no, Jonas and Martha have a goal and they're trying to succeed. And we understand the stakes. We understand what they're trying to do, why it's important. what the risk is, and everything about it is like narratively very easily to bite into. Which is something I don't think any episodes this season have really had, as focused as this at the very least.
No, I agree. I think once you got to somewhere in the middle of season 2 and onwards, and I don't think this is necessarily a complaint either, the scope widened. So rather than any individual goal, objective, stop this thing, it's kind of just the overarching trying to understand the knot rather than, you know, actively doing something for it. Whereas this episode had a purpose.
Which I think is, you know, like I say, it's not necessarily complete because Dark's such an insane world and understanding the knot is so important. But there is a point where it almost just became like, here's more and more parts of the knot and things click together and things. And that was good and entertaining. But there is something to be said for having a focus, having something that you can hone in on, and having a character goal that you're emotionally invested in. And I think if there's any complaint I would have is Dark as a concept as a whole show, just looking at the whole thing, is that sometimes it definitely is a show that's more about the concept than it is about the characters. The characters are there to be tools for the concept. And I think I like in this finale that it kind of honed back in a little bit and let me care about these characters again.
I'm not sure that's been true. I think that's only really been true this season, honestly. I think a lot of season 2 I still cared about a lot of characters and their personal goals, especially, you know, the teenagers in particular. I think really focused.
You're very possibly right. I mean, I didn't rewatch season 2 before I watched this, so my memory is a little bit murkier in terms of where things shifted in certain ways. But this season has definitely felt like that.
I agree with this season, absolutely. And it's kind of not so bad because it's the final act, and you know, because we understand all these characters anyway. I haven't felt like I've been lacking it all season. It's just the return to it here makes you notice.
Yeah, and I think having that single focus, I think actually makes this my favorite episode of the season pretty easily before I even get to like kind of how things end or wrap up. One of the things that I love though in retrospect now, once it's explained about the origin world, the idea that there was a world that created these two, this idea that, you know, you can't have either Earth 1 or Earth 2 without Earth 0 to keep using DC terminology.
Yeah.
But you have the origin world, and it turns out that the aspect ratio difference is not indicating, you know, Tanhaus's timeline. It was indicating this is Tanhaus in the origin world. This is the original timeline.
Like 5 minutes into this episode, when you kind of understood, oh, that's why the aspect ratios are, I was annoyed at us for not getting it. I was like, we should have got this. It was there. Why did we not focus on this? It's all like all this stuff like Tanhaus building the machine that's a different machine. Why did we not get this? What is wrong with us?
Because we're so wrapped up in everything going on, we can't catch everything.
I know.
So, you know, yes, for the record, Martha, who was with Adam, didn't have the big scar. Yes, I was wrong. For some reason, I was convinced she had the scar. I don't know why. Admittedly,
you were so convinced that I was just like, well, I guess you're right.
I will say this. If there's one detail that I think for me will be cleared up on a repeat viewing, it's all these Marthas. Because while I've kind of got it in my head, I feel like it'll click better when I'm thinking about it the entire time when I watch it again.
Oh, I agree. And there's some other things that our commenters have pointed out from like things that are especially in previous seasons that have had answers in these last couple of episodes.
I forgot we asked the questions though, so it never occurred to me.
No, it was stuff like Noah and the man who we didn't know, who were tunneling out the tunnel in the 1920s in season 2, turned out that was adult Bartosz. But we didn't know that at the time.
I think the general conception at the time is that it might be old age Noah. I think it was like he was killing himself, but obviously by the time we got to Noah's actual death, that was
right.
Clearly wrong.
But you know, things like that I think on a repeat viewing there will be a lot of these little things that really click into place that actually do make me want to watch this again at some point.
Yeah. So yeah, like there's a bunch of sort of stuff happening at the start as Claudia is explaining this. Obviously, we see the original world and the turning on of the time machine, and that photo we saw of his family. That's kind of the linchpin of all this. I love how important that ultimately became to be. And even Regina, like Regina's kind of this interesting character in that she's fairly minor in terms of like her actions on the show itself. But as a motivation for Claudia, who is the one who actually observes that there has to be a third world and then ultimately gives the mission to, you know, convinces Adam to convince young Jonas to then convince. And I actually also love that it kind of explains why there's not tons of like parallel like timelines being created constantly. It's because no, it's only at this one moment in time. It's when the world stands still. That is the only time we can actually create a second tangent, if you will. We can do it on both Earths. We can do it both in their apocalypse and our apocalypse, but it has to be when the world stands still. Any other time, it's just what's always happened, and that's it.
It's a smart decision, and tying it back into the loophole, right? Which is something that we've known about since season 1. Been like, this is the loophole, and Adam just never found it, but everyone else did.
Well, that was the other thing, actually, is that there's 2 different points in this episode that I mean, you can just take both of them. It doesn't have to be one or the other, but there's 2 moments in this episode that kind of give us why the show is titled Dark. Because, I mean, it's nothing that I've ever really thought about or questioned before. But there's a point in this speech where Claudia is given to Adam about Adam and Eve, how both of them, you always think you know what's going on, and you're trying to break the cycle, she's trying to restore it, but you're both in the dark to what's actually happening. And she intentionally continued to keep them in the dark. The idea being that she had to like betray him so that ultimately she could come back here at the end after his final like end game, and now it's time to actually tell him what's going on and how to save or how to end, you know, both worlds, and how both worlds aren't supposed to exist. The entire loop is not supposed to exist.
And this way Regina lives because it turns out that implication that maybe Tronte was her father wasn't true after all.
No, because even the flat out say it, because Tronte even he's with Claudia at the gravesite right before she asked him to kill, you know, her in the bed. You know, he says, "Oh, I always thought I was her father," and she's like, "No, I'm glad you weren't," because that means that she's not part of the Martha and Jonas lineage. Therefore, she will survive and she will live in the world without the loop. Which is a very interesting caveat, because it's funny because like we joked that like, everyone's going to end up being related to everyone, but it's actually very important that there's a good number of characters who aren't. There's characters who are devoid, or you know, they're separate from that lineage. And I had a few of them in my head throughout the episode. Obviously, the ending kind of revealed a couple that I hadn't thought of, just because I wasn't thinking about them. If I'd sat down with a family tree and really gave it some time, I'd be able to get them all. But
sure.
So I like that one reason. The other reason for why it's called Dark kind of comes at the end of the episode, so we'll talk about it there. But no, this first chunk is all about explaining the origin world and why Tanhaus, who again, I loved that this relatively minor character.
He was always just kind of like in season 1, he was just there to facilitate the time travel, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was just there to fix the device / build the device, depending on which time period you're in. But that was it.
Yeah, he became ultra important, and it stands to reason that when he did turn on the machine and created the 2 new worlds out of his, that he did go back in time, and that it loops back into, you know, the old Tanhaus with the watch and the blind kid. Like, you know, obviously he goes back there, and like that world or that strand comes from him in some way. Quite
possibly that, or that was all just a massive red herring.
Oh, maybe. But what did he say about the watch and the was it? He was looking for his wife, I think. Obviously, it's not his wife he's looking for. He's looking for his son and daughter-in-law and granddaughter.
Yeah, in originally, in that sequence, he has the For Charlotte watch, and it's he was convinced he could time travel, and he was trying to bring his wife back. And he talks about the favorite play being the play that Martha does, which is the wife who's dead. That was her favorite play.
Yeah.
So there was all these like red herrings there that definitely felt like it was on those lines.
I feel like the watch going back though, assuming the watch comes from.
I was gonna say.
I'm assuming the watch comes from the real baby Charlotte, the one who died in the car crash. I'm assuming that the watch was made in her honor or before she died or something. Like, I'm assuming that's where the watch comes from.
This is where I'm not actually certain on that anymore. I'm not sure if the watch wasn't just kind of passed down as a memento. And okay, now so the original old guy Tanhaus, his father, his father in the carriage, his wife who died was called Charlotte, and it was her watch. And then this got passed down the family, and now there was a new baby Charlotte.
Now you're saying this, you could be right in the sense that maybe the reason why Tanhaus, even in the first place, is obsessed with the bridge and the black holes and time travel is because it's something he got from his grandfather or whoever. Like, it's something that's been passed down
family
to the family.
Stories.
Yeah. So he was been interested in that his whole life, and obviously it was all theoretical until he actually lost his family and decided that he really wanted to make this happen. Yeah, okay. No, that stands to reason. That makes some sense. So so essentially what we see of the old Tanhaus family and the new timelines is still more or less accurate to, at least in spirit, of what the original Tanhouses were.
Yeah, I think it kind of has to be more or less, because otherwise our Tanhaus in the origin world wouldn't exist, right? Because if there was some sort of looping causing it, he has to exist naturally before time breaks.
Yeah. So no, that stuff's super fascinating. We have, of course, basically, okay, Adam has to go and get Jonas at the point again. So he actually comes into... Do you know what that's reminding me of? And obviously, we can make comparisons to Back to the Future all throughout this show. But this moment for me, and you've not seen the second Back to the Future, so this one might be a little lost on you. But this, and I guess mild spoilers for the end of Back to the Future Part 2, if it's something you've not seen yet and you plan on it. But, at the end of Back to the Future Part 2, like after they're getting the almanac from Biff at the school and they're doing all this and they eventually get it, Doc's in the DeLorean, it gets struck by lightning and he disappears, right? And Marty's stranded in 1955. And then this car pulls up, it's a mailman essentially. He's like, oh, we took bets on whether or not you'd actually be here, but there was a letter given to us in 1885 saying to come here on this night with this letter, and it says to Marty, and it's Doc, he says he's been put back to 1885. Right, this is all just build up for this moment in Back to the Future. This is not what I'm comparing it to. It's for the reference. But and then Marty's like, well, there's only one person who can help me now. And then it cuts to the final scene of well, not the final scene, but near the end of Back to the Future Part 1, which is Doc going down the line and hooking the things up, and Marty going back to 1985, right? And he sighs, he walks down the lane of fire, he sighs, and it's the last time you saw him from that time period in the original movie. And just at that moment where it was going to cut in the original film, Marty from Part 2 runs around the back and runs into the scene, and Doc starts freaking out. That's this moment. This is Adam walking back into the scene after the Adam who was here a minute ago just left.
Yeah.
That's what this moment is.
That was a lot of build-up for that comparison.
Fans will appreciate it. You're a Back to the Future denier, but everyone else will appreciate it.
It's a fine movie. Get over this. It's fine.
It's fine, and he doesn't want to watch the sequels. That's a denier. Right. So
I just don't love it. I'll watch it at some point.
So he comes into the scene and explains that he has to trust them, which is hard for Jonas to do in this moment because he's just watched them shoot Martha.
Yeah, it's pretty tough, and he's all season he's been wearing this outfit, that coat with the big collar, and he looks incredibly villainous in that thing. It's hard to trust anyone wearing that.
Actually, I'm pretty sure in the last season finale, I'm confident, 100% confident, I cracked a Crisis on Infinite Martha's joke. And there was a moment in this episode, I think it was when they were setting up the one with the scar to come in with the gun. We see her point of view of that. When they were showing that during all the stuff early on, I thought, it really is a Crisis on Infinite Martha's. There's tons of them. There's tons of them running around.
So many Marthas.
So, but of course, Adam explains that he has to go and get Martha because they go to Earth too. You have to go and get Martha before Magnus and Franziska can take her. This is your moment because this is where the thing's going off. So this is essentially him exploiting the moment on Earth 2 that's been exploited multiple times on Earth 1 by this point. Yeah,
because they mentioned that Martha making that decision to follow Bartos or not is essentially Ava manipulating it, kind of on from her end as that's her manipulating the loophole on Earth 1.
Yes. So this is now manipulating the loophole on Earth 2. And I actually love the visual of this because basically Jonas is just getting there. He's barely making it on time. Magnus is already standing there, holding his hand out. Jonas gets the time orb ready, shoved it in his pocket, and I love the visual of him just jumping at her and them just dusting as soon as he grabs her.
Yeah, it's a great shot.
Very good. And then it's like, okay, we have a clear... And it cuts to Adam a couple of times with Eve, and there's a great moment where Adam kind of proves that he doesn't have to kill her, because Eve remembers her younger self finding her older body, so she's like, oh, you're going to shoot me. And once he doesn't shoot her, she maybe has a moment where she thinks, oh, well, I never actually shot a gunshot, so maybe I always took the gun and shot myself to make sure things happen as they're supposed to. And she tries it. And we think, oh, is this like Noah before where it's not working because she's not supposed to die? And then Adam just, lets go. He's emptied the gun. There's no bullets in it. And
it's a great moment again where it's just like, God damn it! Somehow I'm rooting for Adam again. What the hell?
It kept making me second guess what was going on, and it turned out just to be his choice because he's not here as an enemy. He's here because he thinks it's about to finally be over, and he wants to spend the last minute of his existence with Martha.
It's possibly the first genuine choice he's made in 66 years.
Yeah. Because there's that moment with Claudia as well, where he says, have we done this before? And she says, well, you've tried everything you tried a minute ago. Like, that's happened in an infinite number of times, but this conversation right now, this is something I've orchestrated. This is the first time that we've ever done this. And I genuinely, there was a moment later on where I thought, oh God, does she just think that, or does this always happen? Because there's a moment later that I was worried.
It crossed my mind as well. I was like, okay, she thinks that's the case, but if there was no record, if there was no record of this moment for someone to discover, to pass back through the timeline, maybe she's wrong, and it's all just a sad mistake again.
Yeah. So Jonas. So anyway, yeah. As you said, I just want to agree with you. Like, I was kind of rooting for Adam. Like, it made me sympathetic towards Adam, and I've never been sympathetic towards Adam. Jonas, yes, but Adam, the old Jonas, never.
No, and that's always kind of been the point of the show, is he's what Jonas has been terrified to turn into, is this evil psycho wanting to rule / destroy the world, depending on which point of the timeline you're in and considering it from. He's always been the villain.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think Martha and Jonas have always become the villains, and then this episode kind of shows that they're not really supposed to exist. So even though they're not villainous by nature to begin with, the fact that they exist is wrong. As he puts it, he says, "We are the glitch in the Matrix." Like that. Yes. that was almost a cheesy moment, but you know what? I'm going to give it to them.
if they hadn't made glitch in the Matrix such an integral part of their relationship, and I know I've complained about it in the past, where like there was one time where he said, "I'm like, is she really going to remember that as him?" But now, because you've seen it repeated across so many times, across so many different time periods, across so many parts of their lives, I get it. It works now. So it being here is like, no, that's their thing.
Yeah. So I like that quite a bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're on the origin, and you know they're on there. Well, they're not on Original Earth yet. They're actually just in the 80s to begin with.
I think go back to Earth 1 because it's safe, maybe.
They go back to Earth 186 because this is when the bridge is, this is when the machine's turned on. And I actually kind of like this as well, that for so long we've kind of said that, we've speculated, and even the characters in the show have speculated, that, the bridge was created because of whatever happened at the nuclear power plant in that date in 1986. No, it wasn't. It was this. It was the original Earth that did it. All this that happened in 86 is all just like arguably just a byproduct of whatever, the original machine turning on.
And I think it was fair speculation on both our part and the characters. They had no awareness of this origin world, so they would go, well, what could have caused this? Oh, these catastrophic events probably did. Yeah. It seemed reasonable.
And even, because the two lines that I like the logic of, like, you can't have two without a third dimension, which is a little bit amusing in a show with time travel, because you'd argue that time travel is the fourth dimension, but that's not here, not there. Let's not get into that. But the other thing I liked is actually, just to go back to Adam convincing Jonas, is one of the lines that I think the line that sold Jonas on this is when he said to him, you never have to become me. I think that was because I think as Adam says, I think the performance is really good, because he doesn't want to become him. Even Adam doesn't want him to become him.
He's just accepted it as an inevitability over the course of his life and gone down that route. But he remembers being Jonas and not, and being horrified by Adam and not wanting to be that. So of course he relates. It's him.
Well, I think there's also a reflection to it, though, like a reflection after everything he's done and it's not achieved what he wanted. Is that all the deceit, all the potential murder that he was involved in, everything that he's shadily done behind the scenes, it was all essentially for nothing. And he was devout in his belief that what he was doing was going to end everything. And I think the regret, remembering how he felt when he was younger, I don't think he wants Jonas to become him, not just because young Jonas doesn't want to become him, but because he actually, maybe shame is not quite a strong enough word. But
he knows now that it doesn't work. Yeah. So what's the point? He might as well try something different.
So.
And honestly, just on this kind of area of the episode, one of my favourite lines was, I think it was from Claudia talking to Adam. She talks about how, you're so obsessed with duality and mirror images. And of course, we've been obsessed with that as well, because that's what the show constantly presents us with. And it's like, but you forget there's a third dimension. And I'm like, God damn it, yeah. And this was again, a big moment in the first season. Like you say, this is all just coming back around. It's the same trick they pulled before, essentially. Just, hey, no, there's more than you realized. It's that, the three-prong symbol on the door all over again. It's always in threes, as much as we might think it's about this duality.
Yeah, and more than that, we have the other phrase that comes up again. It's been coming up throughout the show, but again, what we know is a drop. What we don't know is an ocean. Like that comes up again, and I love when it's used later. So they're in 1986. I actually was confused for a second because there was one line that I thought made it sound like they were already in the original world, and I was like, wait, no, it can't be that easy. Like, surely your device doesn't just have a button on it to go to World 3 and it exists. But no, they go into
the real telltale sign they weren't is that the aspect
ratio exactly
changed. To be honest with you.
Yeah, so they go into the bridge, and obviously it's blocked off because it's shut until the machine turns on, and that's why they're there. And a couple of things I loved about those two is that when they first arrive here, and like Martha sort of realizes, and she's in shock because like she just watched him be shot, right? That was her not that long ago.
She just shot him, kind of.
No, not her. The other one shot him.
Well, no, I know, but when I say she did, I mean Martha.
Yes. The one that shot him is the one that went with Magnus in that.
Yes.
Not confusing at all. And she has this moment where she's like, wait, you don't know who I am. This is a Jonas who never spent a couple of days with her, who never had sex with her. This is a Jonas who
has no relationship with her.
Yeah. It obviously still feels something because it is still Martha, but it's not the connection that she actually had with them. And so I love that moment, and I love the moment in the bridge when they're waiting for it to, or in the tunnel rather, when they're waiting for it to turn on, and he turns to her and says, what's Jonas like on your Earth? And I'm like, he doesn't know. Yeah. He doesn't know that he doesn't exist over there.
And I was like, is she going to say something? Is she just, when she thinks about Jonas on her Earth, she's just thinking about the Jonas that she's just spent a couple of days with, which is so close to just being him, right?
Very close, yes. It's just a few days. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but of course the machine turns on. This is probably the most fantastical the show has ever gotten as well, because
this is where it goes full Interstellar.
They go in and it's just like these infinite beams of light. Do you know what? It's almost Matrix code. It's not quite, but it's almost Matrix code.
I can see where you're coming from. If you switch the colors about, it would be horrifically close.
Switch the colors about. It's more just horizontal than vertical, but like it's almost Matrix code the way they're looking at it. And they both have this moment because they can't find each other at first, and they both have this moment where they see each other as kids. Where there's so for Jonas's perspective, there's like a moment where child Martha is like looking into her closet and she can see Jonas, and she's like, "Oh, there's a boy who's sad," and like Katarina's there, and she's trying to like, "No, there's no one there."
So, what the hell? Are you... And even after she sends Martha, she has an extra look back in, being like, "What is she looking at?" Like that's how, even as a child, your imagination, you brush it off. She was so convincing that there was something there that she just had to check for herself again.
Yeah, and then likewise, Martha sees young Jonas just look at a yellow coat, just to make sure we knew it was him. And Michael's there because actually, we should mention the start of the episode. The opening scene is just the scene of Michael killing himself again. We see that again.
Yeah.
Just to make us feel like we've come full circle, which which a lot of shows try to do in their ending, but with Dark it's an especially thematic touch.
When everything is a loop, full circle really means something. So
they bump into each other though, and it's almost looks like a reflected split screen to the point where I was questioning: are they going to bump into each other, or is this going to reveal that they're split screened?
It really felt like the opening title sequence visuals.
It did.
Where they kind of merge in and out of each other.
But no, they bump into each other, and then they use the device that now that they're in the in between, whatever we're going to call this, the Matrix.
Yeah.
And because it's at least when they're in the rain where he actually says we're the glitch in the Matrix later, but they have to solve this, and we cut to Tanhaus having a fight with his son. His son's mad at him for basically ignoring him and spending too much of his life focusing on his work, and he's insane.
Yeah, I think it seems like Tanhaus wants to give him the the watch shop, and you're going to follow in my footsteps, and the usual, and the son's like, I don't want that. I never really wanted that. You never asked me if that's what I wanted.
Which is kind of tying in with the themes of the show, is the idea that he just thought like, oh, the cycle of my family will continue, but he never stopped to consider that his son wanted to go in a different direction. He wanted his own choices. So it actually ties into the themes of the show, this fight. In the simplest way, but it does, and I think that gives it a lot of weight. And the idea being that this was the night that he storms out angry. His wife and child go with him, and they're in the car in the rain, and ultimately they're going to be in an accident. And this is the moment where I was thinking,
Oh, I was so scared for this moment.
Then I was like, oh wait, oh my, don't tell me Jonas and Martha actually cause it. And
Don't tell me they are the accident.
And it reveals that all of this was supposed to always happen, and this is just part of the loop.
It would be a devastating ending, but I'm really happy with Cindy. I think if that's not clear, I think we're both quite satisfied. I would have been equally satisfied if the ending of the show is no, the loop is infinite. Like that would have been in its own way, quite satisfying, like depressing but satisfying as an ending.
I think, given the conversation that we just that they just had in the show, that Tanhaus and his son had, I think with that conversation it couldn't end that way. You'd have to rewrite that conversation, because I feel like bringing the theme into it like that, where it's about free will essentially and actually having free will, I think the show has to ultimately give that point.
I'm not saying everything would be exactly the same in this episode. You'd have to rewrite little bits here or there. But if that was the direction that it wanted to go with instead, then it would have been a perfectly solid choice if they'd wanted to go that route. Yeah.
So, but instead we get this beautiful moment where they're standing in the rain. The car almost hits them and swerves, and I'm like, oh god. And then they get out, or he gets out at least, and he comes up to them. And at first he's angry, but after a couple of things, he calms down, because obviously they look both just they both have lights, deer in the headlights. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. I was looking for that expression.
Yeah.
They both have that sort of blank look in their face, and obviously Jonas has got this noose mark around his neck as well. They're starting to know that, and
I think he's still got blood on his hands as well.
Yeah. So he stops being angry and starts being concerned. He's like, "Are you okay? Do you need help?" So I think first of all, that's a nice thing, because we've only seen him angry so far. So that's like, okay, he's actually a good person. He's angry at his dad, but he's not a dick, right?
And he's perfectly allowed to be angry in this moment. He's like, holy shit! These kids just, as far as he's concerned, okay, don't get me wrong, he's not looking at the road, but these kids just, he assumes, ran out into the road or something at first. I'm assuming he's just like, I didn't see them.
It's adrenaline, because he's scared. He almost had a big accident and hit someone, so he's scared, right? It makes sense. Yeah. So he's angry for a minute, but he calms down and he's like, do you need help? And obviously what they say sounds so cryptic.
They're like, don't go over the bridge. The bridge is closed. There's been an accident.
The bridge is closed, which obviously, literally for them, means the bridge is closed, so we can't actually drive home tonight. But obviously for us as the audience, like, no, the bridge is closed. So double meaning there, which is wonderful. But and then he says the thing, and it's like, it literally just like it was brought up in the previous scene, where I think he mockingly says it to his father, like, oh, you always say, oh, what we know is a drop and what we don't know is an ocean. And
and he goes, oh, but it's what you don't know about me is an ocean.
Yeah. And then Jonas here says that, and he sort of turns around in the rain, and you're almost like, is he going to think that his dad sent some weird pair of teenagers to come and get them or something? And he just has this moment where he's like, and I think it comes down to that what we've been talking about this season and the whole show, is that moment of weird recognition where he just gets a feeling,
he puts it,
just enough to scare him, or enough to feel like he should go back and be with his father. And I kind of love the beauty in this scene, and I think this is where I'm talking about how I was allowed to really care about the characters again. That there's a lot of beauty in this. There's a lot of beauty in his reaction to those two. There's a lot of beauty in him arriving back at the store and the interactions with his father again, and then the father taking baby Charlotte and all that. And then there's a lot of beauty, of course, in the actual ending with Martha and Jonas as they're fading away.
And there's just, before they start fading away, you have this hope that they're outside the loop now. They're in the origin world. Maybe they can just exist here. Maybe it won't erase them.
Well, it doesn't so much say that, because the lines of dialogue actually say, he says, will there be anything, will there be some version of us in the world after this? Are we just gone forever? Is it just this? And he says, he doesn't know. But there's this kind of hope to it. There's this kind of hope that maybe there will be, maybe there won't be. But it's we're not stuck in an infinite loop. So to go back to that previous conversation, it's ultimately they have to decide to let their worlds go because they don't belong to them.
No, it's a beautiful ending for them, and we'll get to the point as to whether or not some version of them does exist.
Oh yeah, we got to the
just
epilogue,
in the sense of just this particular Jonas and Martha, just these ones in the origin world. Before everything started going down, before they started disappearing, just as soon as they'd fixed it, they'd saved Tanhaus from doing everything. There was a moment where I thought, oh, maybe they're outside the loop. They're outside of it all. They're in the origin world. Maybe the two worlds can disintegrate, but they can just exist. They can be one last paradox, and they can exist and be together. You just got that little hope in the back of your head, but it's just not to be.
No paradoxes allowed, I'm afraid. Like this is fixing everything, and it's just it is a beautiful ending for them. I think like he says we're perfect for each other, and they hold hands as a dying. And I love that it cuts to Adam and Eve also holding hands. That bond is still there, regardless of the last 60 years of them at each other's sides.
When it all comes down to it, it's still there between them. Yeah.
We even cut to middle-aged, Jonas and Martha fading away, and Claudia, basically the characters who were left after the apocalypse. Or
just
after
everyone else.
I say after, not the apocalypse, but after in the 2050s. Yeah. Okay, middle-aged Jonas is actually still back in whatever time period, but the point being is that
it just wants to show us all of them are gone. Is more the point. It's just this is all happening simultaneously, despite where they are or when they are. Yeah.
So obviously, and we got what would you call it? What a Wonderful World playing cover of it, of course, but that's playing as they're all fading away.
And this is the final montage,
and
essentially.
It's a final montage, and I actually thought when it cut to black, I'm expecting something after this, but they could be ballsy and just go to credits now.
The only reason I expected something is because there's always a couple of minutes after the montage, always. But
that could break the trend. If
there's ever a time,
if there's ever a time to just cut to the credits, just do it now.
And I have to imagine there was a temptation for them to just end on that moment, and it would have been a wonderful moment to end on.
But that said, it's also meaningful to us because we can leave it ambiguous in the hope of what the world is going to be without them. But I think showing the characters who do still exist outside the loop, and seeing them be happy, is something. I mean, Waller almost told us what happened to his eye.
I knew it wasn't going to. I knew something was going to happen. As soon as he started up the story, I was like, they go. I'm like, no, they're not. Those bastards, they're just doing this for us again.
So, we have this group of characters. We have Hannah, who's pregnant, seemingly with Voller's kid.
Yes.
We got Peter, we got Katharina, we have Bernadette, who we've not seen in a while. Actually, no, we have kind of, but not like this in a while. And then we have, who's the sixth character? Regina, obviously. Regina, the most obvious
one.
Yeah. And it does this thing where like the lights go out, and Hannah has this weird moment looking at the coat, right, the yellow coat that's sitting over in the corner, and she says, I had this crazy nightmare last night, and she says it was like everything went black, everything went dark, to use the exact word, which I think is important, and the world ended. And it's this idea that everyone who survived, like, they still have a connection to those worlds, because we've seen throughout these other versions that there are these little just links in their brains, that these little deja vus. She even says deja vu, I think, actually, at one point.
She does, yes. These little parallels that shouldn't have any reason for them to do the same thing on both Earths, for example, but they just did, or seemingly randomly. They came to that conclusion. Yeah,
so it's the idea that she had a nightmare about the world's going dark last night, essentially.
But it was a good thing.
Yeah, it was a good thing, because now this world gets to live. She doesn't understand it, obviously. She says, she's like, it's hormones or something. I don't know what's going on. Like, and then someone says, have you thought about what you're going to name the baby? And obviously, this is where we all sort of lean forward and go, she's got to say it. She's got to say it. And she's like, this is a pretty nice name. Cut to black.
It's so interesting seeing some of this stuff in the origin world. Like, that street where they're on, for the final bit with the car, and just seeing that wide shot that we've seen so often.
Mm-hmm.
But not having the nuclear plant in the background, because that was never part of this world. That was only part of the loop. It was kind of bizarre to see, just because I'm so used to seeing that. Even got used to in this season seeing it with the plant on the wrong side. But just seeing it here without one at all was just unique.
Yeah, it's funny how that street's been such an important place in the show, because that bus stop and that little area is just such a prominent area that we've just returned to time and time again.
There's like almost a temptation to just be, it's just a nice easy filming location. That's why they used it to begin with, right? But there's been so many prominent moments there for so many characters,
and it's worth mentioning,
so many decades.
And it's worth mentioning. I really noticed at this time at the end, it splits off into three. There's three directions leading from this crossroads. It's a T shape. It's three directions.
Yeah, and there always has been, right?
There always has been, yeah, but it never really occurred to me until this moment that how visually relevant that was to everything.
Yeah, it's a beautiful ending here.
And correct me if
Yeah,
I'm
it really
wrong,
is.
the power plant always had two reactors, right? It was always two.
2, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
again, only two of the fake worlds, only two of them had nuclear power plants in it. The real world doesn't. Therefore, I don't know. And again, I'm not saying that that's why there's only two, but I think again, just a little thing.
It just ties in again, like, in this, the show attempted deliberately to mislead us. I'm not angry about this. Into going down the duality path intentionally. Like, everything was mirror images. Everything was in twos. Jonas and Martha, like you say, the two stacks of the plant. Just the mirror. Everything was in these pairs, but ultimately there's always a third element, and it does such a good job of going, no, everything's in twos. Everything's in twos. You're constantly thinking in twos, that it can pull this same trick again with, no, there's a third thing, and it still gets you. You're like, God damn it, of course there is. Because there always is in this show, but you just forget, because it leads you down away from that intentionally.
Except for Martha, there's 9.
Probably.
Just putting that out there. No, I love the ending. I think the ending does actually make it work in a way that I never really expected it to really all click together in a satisfying way. It really shows that they had an idea the whole time, and I'd love to go back and watch it all again, and notice the first time we saw that photo of that family and how important they are. Like, they're the motivation that created everything accidentally, but
yeah. And in terms of, we talked about how the event that kickstarted the actual bridge opening was misleading, because we assumed, like the characters, it was to do with something in one of the two Earths. Even just what the origin is, being the child of Jonas and Martha, it's not at all. It's a lie, but it's a lie the characters believe. So it works for the origin is the car crash. It's as simple as that.
I wonder, like, if you're watching the whole thing again, how many little moments feel different because we know what the real origin is.
Yeah, one of the moments I loved, actually, is they repeat the line in this episode that I think it comes from the very first episode of how do you save someone from being killed, whatever, and it's just like, you go back in time and stop it happening. You save them before it happens. And I'm pretty sure that was a conversation with maybe Mikkel and Ulrich. It's like one of those jokes in the very first episode, when they're doing like magic tricks at the start in the house. I think that's from that scene, but ultimately that is Claudia's entire driving motivation at the end here, to save everything, is how do I save Regina? I stop it before it happens.
She's just kind of lucky in a way that what she's trying to fix is the wrong thing that happened. Like, it's like, it's one thing if she just wants to save her own family member, but it's another one when it's a time anomaly in the first place that caused, or seemingly is the cause of what's going on with her.
But without that personal motivation to drive her. I
remember thinking this when I rewatched season 1 before season 2, but I might even have to go back and look at this again in another context. That scene you're talking about, doesn't Mikkel do like a trick with 3 cups? And like where the ball is?
Yeah, it's that classic, misdirection trick. Of course it was a 3.
Yeah, but I want to go back and watch that scene again to see if, again, thematically, is there something in the way he does that trick and the point he makes when he sort of shows off. Because I remember you like going, "Oh, how did you do that?" kind of thing, and I'm just thinking about that scene now, and I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the whole show.
Yeah, and at the point then, I think the punchline was, well, it's not where the thing is, it's when did I switch it. So it was not where but when, but it was such an important establishing thing for the thematics of the show, especially in the first season. But it maybe it has a lot more meaning than we realize now, because like I said, I rewatched those seasons before this season, but there's so much that this revealed that I'm like, oh god, I want to watch it all again.
Yeah, there's always the third cup.
Yeah,
it's always going to be the third cup. All right, I think we will wrap up there, because we could probably sit and rabble on forever, but naturally I do think this was extremely satisfying. I don't think Dark is without its flaws. I've pointed a couple of them out this season as we've been going. I think the flaws have been more obvious as the longer it's went on, just because it's kind of fallen back in some, techniques.
Overall, I agree, but overall I think it rises above those flaws. In general, it overcomes what they are and becomes something, greater than the sum of its parts, I would say.
I can see that. Where it ranks on my all-time ranking, one day we'll find out when we do a top 50 TV
It's-
shows or something, but
It's probably up there. I mean, it had a very satisfying ending. It didn't outstay its welcome. Those are really good things in its favour.
mm-hmm. But that is us. So let us know what you thought of the ending of Dark, pointing out any moments that you want to talk about that we didn't talk about, and how you feel about it. No doubt there's lots of little hints and little things that connect back to previous episodes and seasons. By all means, now it's open season, you can point them all out in the comments. But that is us. So thank you very much. Please like the video. Liking is really important on YouTube. It lets YouTube know that you think we're worth recommending, and it does so. So please do that. You can also support us financially over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for as little as $1 per month and get some bonus material and, feel good about helping keep all the content coming. Get us on Twitter at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. Just look out for more shows coming. We do shows from Netflix. We try stuff from Amazon, and we try stuff from HBO, things like that. And some stuff ends up being as exciting as interesting to talk about. If you've not watched Mr. Robot, go back and watch Mr. Robot and watch our reviews with it. Or Twin Peaks. Twin Peaks is a good one to go watch with our reviews.
Twin Peaks was fun.
But yeah, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?